Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Desi from Clean Air Partnership, and with me on the call is Rakshan Balachandran, and I will give the word to him very shortly. But first, I wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. Clean Air Partnership is based in Toronto, and we acknowledge that the stolen land on which we operate is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. At CAP, we recognize that many Indigenous peoples are particularly vulnerable to climate change and will be disproportionately impacted by its effects. Through our work, we are committed to disrupting ongoing approaches to climate governance that reproduce settler-colonial relations and systematically exclude Indigenous peoples from policy making. In the next video, I wanted to share just something, hopefully, that we can all remember.
There's a few things you should know about Indigenous peoples and what we know today as Canada before you keep scrolling. Most importantly, we still exist. In fact, we're one of the fastest growing populations here in Canada, and we're here to stay. We exist and take up all spaces. We're not just found on TV or reservations. Residential schools and boarding schools were real and continue to affect us today. The 60s scoop was real. Sterilization is real. MMIW is real. Suicide and incarceration is real. And we pay taxes. Non-status Indigenous peoples are Indigenous peoples too. Disconnected, reconnecting, and enfranchised Indigenous peoples are still Indigenous. Indigenous peoples are not to be romanticized. We wear regalia and outfits, but not costumes. Our women are sacred, and misogyny, sexism, and homophobia have no place in our cultures. And finally, we're friggin' deadly, and don't touch our hair.
In moving on to one of our Clean Air Partnership resources, the Municipal Climate Decisions Calendar provides a central platform to share information about upcoming council and committee meetings from across municipalities in Ontario. We will be sharing a link to it, but feel free to check what is happening in your municipality. Lastly, our upcoming events, which is tonight at 7 p.m., we'll have a community engagement webinar and talk about electric vehicles. And on April 5th at 10 a.m., it's our Zero Carbon Would-Be Costing Study methodology webinar. And we'll share links shortly so you can register if you're interested. And now I'm giving the word to Rakshan. He's the reforestation organizer at Nature Canada. He has a background in urban forestry and currently helps facilitate NGO and city involvement in the 2 Billion Tree Program. Rakshan, you can take it away, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Great, thank you so much, Desi. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you all here today. Just gonna share my screen. Yeah, so as Desi mentioned, I'm the reforestation organizer at Nature Canada, and I'm just here to speak a little bit about the federal government's 2 Billion Tree Program and how Ontario municipalities can take advantage of this program. So to just introduce the program, the objective of the 2 Billion Trees program that the federal government is running is to plant an additional net amount of 2 billion trees. So the trees that are being planted are meant to be there permanently. They shouldn't be harvested. The benefits of this program include better climate change responses, so having an environment that's more adaptive to the impacts of climate change due to the growing tree cover, increasing biodiversity, and also increasing the well-being of urban communities where there are also urban forests and tree planting projects in such urban communities. So the program started in 2021, and planting has also commenced as of that year. And the program works by the federal government granting specific funds to certain organizations to undertake tree planting projects in their communities. So Indigenous communities and organizations, First Nations, provincial and municipal governments, and NGOs are all eligible to put forth the proposal to this program and obtain grants to undertake their tree planting projects. So just to go by the numbers, the program is expected to last 10 years, and they're hoping to plant 2 billion trees by the end of 2031. $3.2 billion will have been invested in the program by the time the program is expected to wrap up as well. And the government also grants funds to applicants that cover 50% of complete project costs. And in the case of Indigenous-led projects, the government will grant and cover up to 75% of project costs. So the program will fund specifically tree planting projects on private and public lands and in rural, urban, and remote areas as well. So there's no restriction as to where the trees are planted in general. And a wide variety of projects are also funded, such as afforestation, reforestation, and forest restoration projects. And they can also include, for example, riparian zone restoration as well. However, the program will not fund legally required tree planting, such as tree planting that's required after harvesting the land, and forestation projects that would disrupt existing ecosystems, such as grasslands. So right now there's an ongoing call for proposals, and there are 4 streams through which you can apply to get funding. So there's the tree planting streams, under which you have the urban, suburban, the small scale, and the mass planting streams. And we'll go into this a bit later. And there's also the capacity building stream. So before we go and dive deeper into what those streams are, I want to say that the application process for all the tree planting streams are actually now open. And there's an ongoing call for the proposals right now. However, the capacity building stream has yet to open, but is expected to be available in this summer. So there were 2 deadlines earlier this year, but the next few deadlines to submit the tree planting proposals by are April 13th, June 8th, and August 10th. And you'll be able to get a decision 6 months after which you apply. Yeah, but so the April 13th deadline is obviously a little too close, but the June 8th and August 10th deadlines are viable options, and we're hoping that there are more deadlines soon to be posted later this year. So just to give a little bit of a background on the 2 billion tree proposals. So the proposals can be either submitted alone by your municipality, or you can submit it in a partnership of cities across Canada. And the 2 billion tree program is also a competitive process. So that means that the proposals that are being submitted are evaluated in comparison to each other. So there's also these guides for the proposal streams, and that have a lot of useful information about what the components of the proposals are, and also the criteria for the applications. So what NRCan is looking for in evaluating your proposals and granting funding. And we'll actually make that available to you all after this webinar. Current funding agreements are also available online as well. So when you check on the Government of Canada website, you can also look at what cities and what organizations have also received funding from NRCan to do their tree planting projects. And so that's part of NRCan's commitment to be transparent with their funding and application process. So let's get into the tree planting streams. So like I said earlier, there are 3 options. 1, urban, suburban, 2, small scale, and 3, mass planting. So in the urban suburban tree planting stream, if you want to apply to that stream, your tree planting project must be located in urban suburban areas, and NRCan requires you to plant a minimum of at least 10,000 trees per year. So they don't divulge much on the actual size of the tree, but it's expected that you're planting saplings, not seedlings. For the small scale and mass planting streams, if you're choosing to apply to those streams, your projects need to be located in rural and remote areas. And NRCan also requires you to plant a minimum of at least 50,000 trees per year for the small scale stream, and 500,000 seedlings or saplings per year for the mass planting stream. For all streams, however, plantings should be held across many clearly defined sites. So in your proposal, you'll be laying down the different sites in which you'll be planting, but multi-year tree planting arrangements are also accepted. So you can also be flexible in how long you want the project to last for, and how many years you want the funds to be granted for. So you can, for example, agree on a 5-year contract with NRCan to undertake your tree planting project. Your projects can also include urban forestry expansion and riparian zone restoration as part of your overall tree planting projects and proposals to these streams as well. So the next option, which doesn't really involve tree planting, is the capacity building stream. So there's no minimum tree planting requirement, but the government will grant you up to $150,000 per year for 2 years if successful to basically support capacity building efforts. So that includes knowledge building, outreach, training your staff, community engagement, and any other activities that basically contribute to planning tree planting projects and forest monitoring and management. So for example, tree inventories, canopy studies, and you could also undertake tree planting and forest management activities as well. However, it's important to note that for this stream, you need to demonstrate a need for funding. And this stream is also designed to support organizations in building capacity and helping them apply to the tree planting streams in the near future. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're applying for this stream. So the key principle of 2 billion trees is basically to plant the right trees in the right places for the right reasons. So right trees being that they're native species, or if not native, trees that will be resilient and adaptive to the future impacts of climate change, and also in the right places, because NRCan is also trying to advocate for better biodiversity, and trees must be planted in a manner that helps restore habitat, reconnect fragmented landscapes, but also increase canopy cover and ecosystem services. And also trees must be planted for the right reasons, which include climate change mitigation, increasing biodiversity, well-being, and in urban communities, equitable access to green spaces. So for example, for a city that's planting or that's hoping to apply to the 2 billion trees program, it's helpful to keep in mind the concept of tree equity, in which you want to ensure that all neighborhoods or all parts of the city have equitable access to trees and other green infrastructure. So for example, you'd like to justify your planting project by saying that your tree planting project will help increase tree equity. So for example, a city like Vancouver, like you see in the map here, you can see how generally the neighborhoods that have a higher income and a lower percentage of BIPOC populations, they tend to have the higher canopy cover. So if you're the city of Vancouver, you'd like to plan a tree planting project that aims to increase tree equity and increase all urban residents' access to green infrastructure. So that's something to keep in mind, especially as tree equity. It's an issue that's plaguing Canadian cities across the country. So Nature Canada, what our role is in this program, we're trying to support, and we're trying to do that through resolving barriers. So for example, we know that there's a barrier of lack of information regarding the 2 billion tree program, and Nature Canada, we're here to help distribute that information. We have a good solid connection with NRCan, and we're ready to answer your questions through having discussions with them and relaying back the responses to you guys. And we're here to also play that overall support role. So if you have any questions about the proposal at all, we're here to provide you with the guidebooks. So the guides, which I mentioned earlier, provide all sorts of information on the actual proposal, including such as, what will the grants cover, which that includes like the salary, expenditures, and other tree planting related costs, and other questions that you may have about the proposals. That's some of the things that we do to support, but we're also here to, jump on in meetings with you guys and provide feedback on your proposals as well. There's also a second barrier of being unable to meet the minimum tree planting requirements. So we're also aware that in the case of that you're applying for the urban suburban stream, it's really difficult sometimes to meet the 10,000 tree per year requirement. And what Nature Canada recognizes is the importance of facilitating and mediating partnerships. So NRCan does allow for organizations and cities to partner across Canada, and so that their tree planting projects combined can meet that 10,000 tree threshold. So if you still want to take part in this program, but you're kind of unsure that your project will meet that requirement, just get in contact with Nature Canada, and we're here to link you up with other cities or other organizations and make this program a bit more accessible to you all. And there's also the potential barrier of lack of networking and resources. So Nature Canada, to resolve that, has put together Canadian reforestation coalitions. So we have 5 coalitions, one each in BC, Alberta, the Prairies, Ontario, and the Maritimes. So it's a meeting space for NGOs, cities, environmental groups to convene virtually on a monthly basis to discuss reforestation issues and also potential participation in the 2 Billion Tree Program. So participating in these coalitions, it's a good opportunity to knowledge share, network, get insights from NGOs and other cities, but also find potential partners and see if they'd like to collaborate on participating in the 2 Billion Tree Program. I'd also like to kind of introduce 2 alternative programs to the 2 Billion Trees. So Tree Canada is an aggregator under the 2 Billion Tree Program. So what that means is that they've received a large amount of funding from the federal government, and they're currently accepting applications from cities and NGOs to apply to them so that they can disperse funds and help you undertake your tree planting projects. And what's a good part about the Tree Canada program is that there are lower, more flexible tree planting requirements. So they require at least around 40,800 trees to be planted and at least 3 hectares of land to be reforested. So it's much more lower and much more flexible than the NRCan requirements for sure. And what's more is that Tree Canada also has a network of arborists and consultants, tree specialists in every province and territory. So when you're undertaking your tree planting project, they're also available to help you out and provide insights on things such as species selection and proper ways to plant the trees in a way that guarantees long-term success. Tree Canada also has a development team that seeks to find sponsors in the region where you're planting trees to get some funds. So they have the capability of potentially covering the complete cost of the project, because right now the way it works is that there's a 50-50 matching program. So Tree Canada provides 50% of the project costs and you have to provide 50% to match them. But with Tree Canada's development team and their ability to find local sponsors and get funds from them, they could be capable of potentially covering the complete cost of the project. The second alternative is Nature Canada's Tree Equity Program. So Nature Canada published a report on tree equity last year, which looked at how Canadian cities had an issue with, tree equity, basically. So not all neighborhoods received the same access to green infrastructure. And that's what we realized in our report. And something that we're looking to build off on that is we are currently established a tree equity committee. So it's a committee where NGOs and cities can come together, and we're trying to provide support towards them to establish a tree equity campaign. So the campaign would include 3 parts, including like community engagement, so raising awareness among urban residents about the need to plant trees in underserved neighborhoods and increase tree equity. Number 2 being political advocacy, so getting in touch with local decision makers, the urban forestry department, and promoting better urban forestry measures and policies that help tree equity and the urban forest in general. And number 3 would be tree planting projects, primarily in underserved neighborhoods to increase that level of tree equity. So in this committee, Nature Canada is committed to also sourcing funding to help cover costs of the tree planting project, providing overall support on the implementation of the campaign, and also facilitating a knowledge sharing space for cities leading such campaigns across Canada. So if you're interested in pursuing a tree planting project to provide more trees to underserved neighborhoods and increase your city's tree equity, this is also an alternative option where we will try to source funding to help cover those costs and provide some support on that as well. So that kind of wraps up the presentation. So if you have any questions at all about the federal government's 2 billion tree program, or the program that Tree Canada is running, or our program with Tree Equity, feel free to get in touch with me at the email listed here. And I'll put you in touch with the necessary staff. So for example, if you want to get in touch with Tree Canada, I'll give you the contact. And with Nature Canada, you'll be invited to join the Tree Equity Committee. But yeah, so that kind of wraps up the webinar. And thank you all for listening. And yeah, just you to answer any questions or concerns if you guys have any.
Yes, thanks so much, Rakshan. Yes, there are a couple of questions, and we're going to start with them, but also I want to invite everyone, if you have, you want to ask your question verbally, just raise your hand and we'll work this out. I will start with the questions that we receive. In the right reason, is climate adaptation, for example, shading, included?
Yeah, for sure. So climate adaptation falls under like responding to climate change. So yeah, that is included. Yeah.
Thanks. Can protecting tree canopies through measures like reducing damage caused by vehicles be included?
So, like, be included in the 2 billion tree program?
I think so. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's more of a policy measure, I think. So like the 2 billion tree program, they specifically fund like tree planting projects. So if you're looking to maybe replace such trees that were damaged by vehicles, obviously that would be included. But if you're looking to, I don't know, maybe address this politically and advocate for this politically for like better measures to protect trees, then that's something that you could contact Nature Canada with, as we're, you know, hoping to like support cities and organizations in doing that.
Right, thank you. A bunch of comments here. Yes, we are recording and we'll be sharing the presentation and the recording to all of the registered people, and a bunch of comments for saying thank you for the presentation. I also have a couple of questions. So at some point of your presentation, you mentioned about the type of trees, and I was and then like that needs to be native or resilient. Would it be some guidance on the type that is best to be used? Would that it's included, or it's up to the municipality?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah. So NRCan is very broad in their requirements. So they've just been suggesting that if you're going to be planting species, that they be native, and if not native, that they should be proven to be like species that will be resilient and adaptive to future impacts of climate change. But really it's the city's choice. So like what type of species that you're hoping to plant is up to you, and you'll have to outline that in the proposal. So yeah, but that's also one of the means by which you'll be evaluated. So also keep in mind that, you know, monocultures aren't really the best way to go about it. So if that might not result in a successful proposal.
Right. I think we already learned the lesson after the ash incidents. Is there a mandate or like monitoring that it's part of this program, which will look after the surviving of the trees?
Yeah, so I think the guides will do a better job than me at explaining like the overall proposal process, but if you look at those as well, you'll find the answer. But they do expect you to list out what measures you'll take to monitor the tree health, and also like what maintenance measures you'll do. And that's all, like they all expect you to outline that in your proposal when you apply. And they do monitoring as well. Like I think they disperse the funds based on how well the trees are doing. So that's also one way in which like they kind of keep track of the projects.
Right. There are more questions coming up, so I'm gonna move to them. For the capacity building grants, are they the same as listed in the slides?
Yeah, so yeah, I think what I was presenting in the slideshow is basically exactly that. So I think one thing to keep in mind is that the capacity building grants they were typically oversubscribed. Like last year, there was there's a lot of applicants to that stream, but very few grants and funds available. But they are making that stream again available this summer. So if you'd like to apply, that there's that option there.
Right. And I did share, whenever it was on your slides, I was trying to find the links and share that right now. So you have access to the links as well. Next question, is the 2 billion tree program tracking seed sourcing?
Not to my knowledge, no. So I'll have to speak with NRCan on that, but my knowledge, I don't think they have been. But I think they are trying to put forward more measures and that support increasing local seed and sapling supply in nurseries and across the country. So, but yeah, I'm hoping they do more work on tracking seed sourcing.
Right. There's a follow-up comment on this that seed sourcing will be instrumental in understanding seed migration and adaptive capacity of tree species. Thank you, Jade, for sharing this.
I do agree. Yeah.
Comment. While we are waiting for more questions to come, I'm just going to scroll to see if there's someone with a hand. No. Would a joint application work? So, for example, 2 municipalities or a county, is that part of the 2 billion tree program?
Yeah, so that is part of the program. So if I were to elaborate on that a bit more, so when you're submitting a joint application, there needs to be an aggregator. So the aggregator themselves won't be involved in doing the tree planting projects, but they'll be taking care of the administration. So basically they'll be coordinating the tree planting projects of the partners. So for example, let's just say if there's an organization, let's just say Nature Vancouver, for example, wants to play the aggregator role, and they can partner with, for example, the city of Vancouver and the city of Edmonton, for example. And what Nature Vancouver would do, which is like an NGO, they'd help take care of the administration. So they basically help coordinate the tree planting projects, but they won't do any projects of their own. But Vancouver and Edmonton would be the cities that actually do the planting on the ground. And the funds would be dedicated to helping cover the cost of both the tree planting projects, but also there'd be some funds given to the administrator as well to like cover the administrative expenses.
So are there any potential NGOs that are kind of like part of the program that would volunteer, or it's up to the municipalities that wants to do a joint application to find NGO to do that administrative work?
That's something that Nature Canada can definitely help with. So we do have a nature network of over like 1,500 members. So that includes like NGOs in cities. So if you do have interest in participating in this program, whether alone or whether it be joint, just feel free to contact us and we will find and see, if there are like local NGOs that would be willing to like support your application, or if there are like other NGOs or cities in other parts of the country that would be willing to hop on in that application as well.
Right. And we have here a comment that the Ontario Urban Forest Council will be exploring how it can support their members. Thanks, Jade, for that. I wonder at this point, I don't know if any of the municipal folks want to jump in. What may be the biggest barrier in taking opportunity of this program? I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if someone has a comment, I'm just curious. You can raise your hand if you're brave. Or you can join, you can speak up if you have any other like comments or questions. Otherwise, okay, here we go, Jade.
Yeah, for sure. I know I no longer represent working for a municipality, but having worked in the sector for a long time and as the president of the Ontario Urban Forest Council, one of the biggest barriers is such a large commitment to the number of trees, particularly in the more urban areas where space is limited. and it can be quite challenging to identify spaces in such a short amount of time. That is certainly one challenge. And then the second is just sourcing the seed stock. We are finding that local nurseries that sell the appropriate stock for meeting the requirements of the program are selling out way earlier than before. And actually the opportunity to diversify species is becoming much more limited. So that's certainly a challenge. And that's why I asked the question around tracking seed sourcing and so forth. The other challenge is still on the back end is while there's some capacity funding, the long-term maintenance of these tree planting initiatives to ensure invasive species don't get in, to be able to do adequate pruning, watering, as you know, we're experiencing longer, drier periods. Still really remain to be unfunded and really challenging to get the expenses allocated that are required to ensure we're really growing these trees and not just putting them in the ground for them to die. So those are definitely still big challenges.
Yeah, thanks, Jade, for jumping in here. That's what I was leading with the surviving, because I know that maintaining a tree can be a challenge for a municipality. But yeah, thanks for jumping in and sharing a perspective. And I don't know, Rakshan, if you have any comment, or if
Yeah.
this can be like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with you, Jade. Like that's something that we've heard about from NGOs and cities across the country, and we do understand that there's like a shortage in supply, like in nurseries, like Canada wide. And you know, believe me, that's something that we're trying to address with NRCan as well. So we're trying to help recommend that they allocate more funding towards helping cities or organizations bolster seed and sapling supply in their regions, and also like give them more flexibility in terms of their tree planting requirements. But yeah, like in this case, like I feel a good opportunity to take advantage of is the Tree Canada program. So the tree planting requirement is slightly lower, and they also have the capability of potentially covering up to the complete cost of the project. So in that case, it does give the municipality a bit room to, like, you know, allocate some of their own funds towards the maintenance aspect of towards the maintenance aspect, basically. So in that regard, I guess, like, I'd suggest that the Tree Canada program is a really viable alternative that municipalities should look at.
Is there any other support about the maintenance of long-term maintenance of trees from some of the other programs? Or can this be some, I know that you're communicating with NRCan, is there something that may come up in the future? So it's like funding for maintaining trees. If this program now is for planting, would be a follow-up with like the funding for maintaining?
Yeah, like I can't really speak to whether they implement like measures in the coming years, like in regard to like helping with maintenance and allocating more funds to that. But I do agree with what you guys are saying, and I do you know, understand the importance of NRCan like granting more funds towards the maintenance aspect of things to help organizations with that. Because so far as I can see, Tree Canada is like the only program that has a vibe or that has a capability to like support organizations and cities with that. So it'd be great if NRCan could do the same.
Right. Jade?
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to hog the mic, but the other thing that you folks on the call may not be aware of, but I am aware that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is examining an urban forest stream through its Green Municipal Fund. And I understand it's in the early stages, but I'm hoping, my fingers and toes are crossed, that there'll be some support not only for the development of management plans at the municipal level, but also opening up of some capital streams, which could include maintenance and things like that. So I encourage anyone that has a relationship with FCM to keep advocating for those programs, because you know, we know that those financial resources are challenging to get approval.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jay, for I was not aware of this, so thanks for sharing. And yeah, hopefully it will turn to have actually funding opportunities. We have time, so I will just wait a couple minutes for if any of you want to jump in and share a comment or a question. Otherwise, Rakshan, I don't know if you have any other thoughts or comments. Is that a no, Rakshan?
Oh, sorry, I was lagging a little, so I couldn't hear your question, Desi.
Oh, am I quiet?
No, I think my internet connection was cutting off a bit. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. No, I was just wondering if you have any comments. I'm inviting everyone else to speak up, but I was wondering if you have any final comments.
Yeah, like I think the reason why Nature Canada is trying to advocate for this program, even though, it does have its room for concerns, but like we're advocating for this program because it's an opportunity for cities and NGOs to take advantage of. It's a really like monumental program that, if done correctly and if implemented correctly, can, put in like a lot of positive benefits and over the long term. So that's why like what we're doing at Nature Canada is trying to help facilitate and make NGOs and cities' participation and engagement with this program a bit more accessible and a bit more feasible. So, if there's any concerns or any questions that you have about this program or about the alternative options that I also mentioned in the presentation, just please feel free to reach out to me at the email address that I listed in the presentation slides. But yeah, I'd just be willing to jump on a meeting and just discuss with you how we can kind of take advantage of this program and see how we can bring it to your city.
Thanks so much. I don't see other questions or comments. And we are okay to finish earlier if that's if audience doesn't have more questions. Maybe that's going to bring you back to the work or lunch if you didn't late lunch if you didn't have one. I'll also stop the